Hi guys, welcome to the Super Little Challenges podcast. I'm Daniel Thomas and my guest today is director Scott Homan. Scott has made the new documentary Witness Underground, which shares the stories of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have found expression and healing through art, in particular playing in bands. I'm an Aussie in Germany. I've been here 10 years and behind me is an above-ground concrete bunker left over from the war. Because these bunkers are so hard to demolish or knock down, a lot of them have been reused and converted into other spaces, including practice rooms for bands. What better place to crank the amp up than in a building that has 3-meter thick concrete walls? This particular bunker even has a rock climbing wall on the outside. And I wanted to do the intro to this episode from here because both Scott and I have had the unique experience of playing music from within bunkers, just like this one. And expression through music is such a major theme in this documentary. It's an awesome documentary. I can't recommend it enough. And please enjoy my conversation with Scott.
Hamburg. Reeperbahn was fun. We had some live music and the city is nice. It felt like a rich city, like financially in a good place, cool art. I loved all the World War II era bunkers that were made into music spaces. That was super cool. So I actually played with my brother. We did some of our personal music with these Germans that we met who were also in a band, and they did some Die Toten Hosen covers, and it was just a fun little collaboration. Just hang out one day.
Yeah, cool. No, I've been in a few bands which we'll get into, which is also one of the reasons I groove with the film very much.
I thought you'd like it. I saw a lot of just following your channel. You have so many diverse interests and you're multi-talented, you're doing a lot that really resonated with me, making music videos, doing acting, doing writing, doing your short documentaries that. I was like, this guy gets what I'm into.
I really appreciate you checking that out because I've only just made that channel actually. And that's one of my things is being a very multi-layered creative. It's all part of expression, right? But I was going to say I was in a band here and we were practicing in one of these above ground concrete bunkers. And I didn't even know that above ground bunkers existed. I thought they were always underground. And then I thought, well, what a perfect building to turn into a practice space because the walls are some of them are 3 meters thick concrete walls.
Yeah, and Germans are building stuff to last 1,000 years, right? It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and some of them are too expensive to knock down, so they turn them into all sorts of things. But what better space than for bands?
The ultimate practice space.
I'm really excited to get into the film. I mean, this podcast is essentially about overcoming challenges, and what's so brilliant with your project is that there's many challenges relative to it. First and foremost, making a film in itself is no small feat of its own.
Yeah.
And then the challenges that the participants have gone through on their own journeys, in terms of stepping away from a belief system. There's a number of challenges just within all those themes. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Thank you. That's a very fair review.
A lot of us are always looking for the relatability of films. What can we find from our own experiences in a film? And with this film, I didn't have a religious upbringing or anything like that, but I explored self-expression very much through rock music and bands. So that's why I very much grooved with the themes of the film. So to kick it off, let's go back to how did it come about? And I'm really interested to know your personal connection to it.
I'll start with my personal connection because I think that's important. My dad, my grandparents joined this particular religion, and the religion is Jehovah's or Jehovah's Witnesses. And they're a global religion that claims to be Christian, but they use the Bible. And when my dad brought our family into that when he was around 30 years old, and I was a little kid, so like 6, 7 years old, we started going. My mom never quite took to it, but it was like, okay, family friends now are part of this church. They liked the like no drugs, safe environment for kids, so they thought. And she went along with it. So it was like she'd go to church with us and be a part of that process, but she never quite liked it, or she never quite joined it. So then I kind of grew up with like almost like a dual life household. So my dad was trying to keep us doing the Christian thing, but it was hard for him to like focus on the religion because he had a full-time job. So did my mom, and we had 5 kids. So like just getting to church once or twice a week was hard. And there was 3 church meetings a week. And we barely ever prepared, just kind of barely being Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, my mom allowed us to do all the normal kid stuff that witnesses normally aren't allowed to do. So like we played some team sports and we had extracurricular activities at school, and all my friends were basically not part of that religion, which is also really strange for someone growing up in that religion. So that was my background with it. And then fast forward to my adult life, I left that religion. I left at 19 and then kind of came back on my own terms in a way where I decided I was like, I don't believe this. I don't believe that. I do want to go to college and, just like a young adult trying to make their way in the world and be independent. And I because my parents were lenient and kind of had a buffer between me and like the leadership of the religion, kind of protected me from kind of seeing the harsher sides of the religion, the more strict side. So I stuck with it for far longer than I'm proud to say I stuck with it. Like I put up with a lot of stuff I didn't appreciate, a lot of stuff I didn't believe. And some part of me in my 20s, like, because I kind of went back to it until I was 27, till 2008. I started believing some of it, or I wanted to believe some of it. And I started taking some parts of the culture seriously, kind of for the first time. And then eventually left. So that's like my background. And then the reason I want to make the film was because of what I experienced when I left. There's not really a dignified way to leave this religion. They have one punishment that they mete out for all. There's a number of levels of punishment, but mostly it's we would do social manipulation and a kind of emotional abuse where you'll be restricted from doing things socially. And that's like the lightest form of punishment. You won't be invited to things outside of just church activities. They have a number of ways of describing it, but then the major punishment is the same whether you smoke a cigarette, you've spent too much time with someone you love, you're in a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship. Basically, there's a ban on intimacy with the opposite sex. And that's like all forms: touching, holding hands, kissing without a chaperone. All those can't happen unless you have a chaperone. If you do find out, that's like some form of sexual sin or immorality. But then if you do have sex, you smoke a cigarette, or you like have a thought crime of just disbelieving in anything, you will get kicked out, cut off from your family, your friends, your community until the only way to go back, the only way to get all those things back is to basically go back without any dignity, crawling on your hands and knees, and go to church while no one will talk to you for a year. You have to show up every meeting for a year. And if you miss some, that like sets back your time of getting people to talk to you again. So like and even then it's like most people are doing that knowing they don't believe a lot of it or all of it, just to have communication with their family. And for me, I was so surprised that my parents took the religion seriously enough that they would treat me that way, because they were really bad at the religion. So for me, it was shocking that they did this. For any other person who leaves this religion, it's like, yeah, of course I knew what the punishment was. For me, it was like, yeah, I've seen people do that. I never participated in that. My family never participated in shunning, but they're doing it to me. Like, why am I the reason that they take the religion seriously? All I was doing was saying, like, my thought crimes were like, evolution is real, probably based on like millions and millions of studies, based on science doing what science does best. Trying to find out how the world works, and then people trying to disprove them, and then it like them coming up with the same results again and again and again. That like when you mix DNA, for example, you create something slightly different, and you add time to that, you have different animals over time. Anyway, it was like evolution was just like one of the many things that I just agreed with, and they have a hard line. You cannot believe in that. For them, it's just a theory or a lie, and their whole thing is the flood happened and God created everything and like poofed it into existence like a magician. Anyway, so all that to say, like, I've been severely shunned by my family. And this film is about that and how it works. I'm not in the film, as you've seen. It's about a group of artists in the religion, growing up in the religion, and their different ways of coming out of their religion. And I was a musician in a band, so I kind of loved their story because I was in this religion and was in a band, and so I saw a lot of parallels to our lives. And I thought I could tell my story kind of autobiographically, like tell my story through their story kind of thing.
I really think it kind of needs to be a personal connection when you dive into something of this nature, because like I say, it's just making any film is an ominous task, but to have that personal connection must have been quite a through line for you to get it out there. Was it very much an indie type funding process into the actual making of it? How long did it take you to develop it, and how long was the whole thing from start to finish?
What you see in the film, it was very foggy that would be a good film for me. And I had we did crowdfunding to get the funding for the film. And I had already started kind of experimenting with an interview series that I called XJW Coming Out, or Coming Out of the Jehovah's Witness Religion. And the idea was interviewing people about their exits from this religion, regardless of how I connected to them, and then packaging it up in these little 10, 15-minute episodes, kind of like your film about the drummer that was your drum instructor. And I love that, like a short documentary with like lots of images and different perspectives. And in my project, it was basically just one person telling their story, but I would film modern day, what their life is like after leaving the religion. And I was trying to do this unique thing I've never seen before. And when I crowdfunded, I was saying I was just going to do more of that. And so I did do a bunch more of that. I filmed with like 15 more people in a few different countries, mostly United States. And when I filmed, I really wanted to work with this group of people though, because I knew them. The people that are in the film, I was in my band. I was in Wisconsin where I grew up, and they were in Minneapolis, but I'd heard of them while I was in my band. I was like, oh, there's like really interesting Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't know that. I've just been hanging out with my high school friends and doing stuff in the nearby city. But I gotten to know about them because they had like an early website as we discussed in the film, that was basically highlighting Jehovah's Witness artists in there while they were making albums. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Like, I do that. That's cool that there's Jehovah's Witnesses that do that. I never met someone in the religion who I thought was like super cool. And if I did, they all left their religion pretty quickly when they turned 19. So I went and met them. I moved to that city. I moved to Minneapolis and I met them. And so like fast forward to my modern day life while I'm making this series, and I got the crowdfunding money, and we made like $11,000 to continue the series. And I went and shot with them first. I got the key interview from Ryan Sutter, who kind of founded the whole music production group and did a lot of the recordings with him and his brother, Rhett. And so I got that interview, and I was like, wow, this is a huge story. And I knew all the next generation, like the second generation of musicians in Nuclear Gopher in Minneapolis. And I'd known them when I was a Jehovah's Witness. So, and I was like, for them, they were like, this guy's bad news. He's like risky, on the fringes of their religion. We don't know if we can trust him, because they were all taking their religion really seriously. And I was sort of at the end of my rope with their religion, like barely doing it. I didn't believe a lot of it. And I would have people over after church. I'm like, let's talk about what we really believe. We'd like drinking wine and beer. And like, I built a rage room that we would like throw the glass bottles at. It's like, after church, we need to have like a second church session where we talk about our real beliefs and then like break glass. I didn't really know what I was doing, but people were like, this guy's something else, like next level fringe. So I went and filmed with them because they had all left their religions since, years had passed, like 8 years had passed since those days, since the breaking glass days. And we kept in touch, and I'd been using Eric and Cindy Elvendal's music that they'd made after leaving the religion. I'd been using that as soundtrack for that project. And so I went and filmed with them to kind of talk about the music scene that they came from and what they were working on next as our interviews for the episodes. And I loved so much of what we got out of it that I was like, whoa, this could be a proper movie. And then I wasn't even sure at that point yet that was true, but I kind of worked with that in mind, even when I was recording it. And I went and shot like 6 more interviews and I never even released those 6 other interviews. There's actually a couple short pieces on our Patreon, but it took me like another couple months to sort of like let everything I shot sink in. Like, this is a real movie. Like, I'm going to hire an editor for this. It took me like 6 months for that to happen.
Yeah. What an interesting process that it evolved organically and just grew from this initial thing. It's almost like you got a bunch of B-sides sitting there as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's many themes to it, but what I really digged is like, there's such a contrast between an organized, call it sect, maybe if that's the. I didn't really know anything about Jehovah, the inner sanctum of the particular religion. I didn't know a lot about it until watching this. But this contrast between a controlled belief system and rock and roll, where there is no control. I love that.
Way of putting it.
I love that the contrast between the two, and this kind of stereotype of what people might think of as a kind of cliche Jehovah's Witness next to an indie guitarist or whatever is pretty cool. So do you think it's fair to say that a number of the participants, they found what they were looking for through music, what this belief system couldn't give them, essentially?
I like that question. I think they were using music almost like it was a coping mechanism for all the ways that they were suppressed. And also a fun thing that they could do that was, it's pretty off. It's in that time period, in that region of the world, and also on the West Coast of USA and Canada, this kind of thing happened. But there's places where this is completely off limits and banned. Like, you can't be making music. You can't even be like basically playing the religion's own music. Like, that could be a problem. Because like they don't want covers and parodies of their content, and like if you're copying or covering other bands from the radio or that you're in the rest of the world, that could be seen as a problem because you're glorifying artists or like self-expression or even the lyrics could be seen as a problem, and like the music you listen to is highly curated. If someone found out you're listening to a band, they might like turn you into the elders or something. So like, I think they did find, you said, did they find what they were looking for? I think they didn't know what it was, but they found an outlet, and they kind of found a way to get away with it. I'm sure they didn't share it with certain people because it would be seen as a problem because they knew the psyche of that person or the leader or the elder or whatever. But then some people they would share it with because that particular human being in the church would resonate with it or like it or secretly listen to the same kinds of music. I feel like that religion's kind of like a narcissist training ground. And that everyone learns quickly how to walk, like step on eggshells around every kind of person. Like a normal person might meet a new person and just, I don't know, not be looking out for danger signs and cues for language they're not allowed to use or something. But for Jehovah's Witness, everyone's always like listening for like 40 different things, or like paying attention to every single like crazy nuance to find out if they're a safe person to share their art with, without being in fear of being like turned into the Gestapo or the, I don't know, what other German words I can use. The SS guards of the faith.
The Stasi.
The Stasi, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this, I mean, I had a Jehovah's Witness come to the door once, and my issue, I'm a curious person. I'm a very open person. I'm always open to conversations, ideas, different perspectives. And I just have a memory where I had a Jehovah's Witness come to the door and presented a magazine about something that was going on in the world at the time, and basically shoved this magazine toward me and said, "What do you think of this crisis that's going on?" And I actually started to comment on it. I can't remember what it was, but I made a comment on it. And then this person removed the magazine, and underneath was the real book that they wanted to present to me. So the magazine presenting was a facade to try and get me hooked into what they really wanted to preach to me. And
I was that guy. I did that.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. I just
everyone has to. Sorry.
I just don't think people like to be hoodwinked. And as I say,
it's a bad start, right?
It's really a bad start, because it's like you can come at me with whatever you wish to, but just be honest about it. Just present the book up front. I guess when there's doors being to try and understand their perspective, I guess when you're continuously just getting doors shut without even having, they're trying to find ways. But I think this, and it's in the film, this kind of, when some of the participants tweaked that there was perhaps some manipulation going on, that's when it's like, hold on, is this on top of the shunning and the other things? But I think you did a really good job of like presenting it in not a biased way at all. I think you just and that's a really tricky thing to do. I think you presented it in a just here's the stories, here's the facts.
Here's what happened.
Here's what happened. Have you had any, call it backlash or response from the Jehovah's Witness community at all?
I think no. Actually, we haven't had any of that yet. And like you'll have a couple of my other related projects and podcast episodes, some people comment something there, but nothing about the film. And it's interesting because ex-Jehovah's Witnesses former witnesses might actually secretly watch it, or they're like, people are self-policing in even the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, because they might still believe some of the religion, and they fear that God might like dislike them for researching or watching something that's has a negative spin about the religion. And definitely people in the religion are doing that. That's how they're programmed to operate. That even Googling something could like make them feel like they've lost the love of God or communication with God when they pray. Or there's all kinds of strange limiting beliefs about doing your own research or watching something. I didn't want to really directly attack the religion. We were all really careful kind of not to do that.
That's my point. It's delicate. Yeah.
And there's a lot of content like that. There's 30 films on the topic, maybe 20, 30 in the world that like at a high level of quality. And then there's like 150,000 videos on YouTube on the topic that are really directly attacking the religion. And that's an angle. I mean, I agree with most of what people have made on the topic, but this story, I wanted it to really focus on the shunning and how it affects people. And also like be able to say like, make a film that's I'm sort of proud of where I came from, because so many of that other content, I would watch it and its kind of point is to say like, this religion is evil. The people inside are imbeciles and we should be pitying them for their lack of intelligence to see through the facade. And also the way we are treated on the outside, or these individuals in the movie or video have been mistreated and abused, emotionally abused or worse by this religion. And so you should feel pity for this situation that these people are in, and like that they roll credits. And I wanted to make something that was like, you know, I had a really good time, even though it was very strange. I was in a band in high school, and then I eventually I formed my own band in the religion with like Jehovah's Witness musicians. And then I found this whole community of Jehovah's Witness musicians because of that. And they were all really interesting people who were making really cool art. And it was basically like what you'd imagine, like imagine a college experience. Most people had a college experience, but for Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Jehovah's Witness, like that's not an option. And so like we partied and like played music and threw little mini concerts all the time. And that was like a really fun, vibrant scene wherever that happened. And, you know, most of the people that were a part of that scene then left the religion and went and lived really interesting lives outside of the religion. And I'm proud of, you know, what we made the most of what that situation was. And it's a very strange thing. And I wanted to show it in a way that we could say like, yeah, it wasn't all perfect, but it was very strange, but it was also really fun and kind of cool, like cool art was being made. That's like, what's, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what's unique. That's what's really unique about it. Again, that contrast between the art and the kooky short films and stuff coming out of it, juxtaposed against the very strict kind of, you know, limiting stuff around the If you relate to someone, like, I mean, nobody joins a cult on purpose. It just normalized a lot of very like strange behavior or just really religious behavior, where your only way of relating to the people you spend 90% of your time with in that group, the only thing you relate to is like reading the same literature by a book publishing company and then talking about it in the way that they want you to talk about it. So like all the conversations end up being really fake and inauthentic. So the level of depth you get with these people, I mean, I made friendships and like I have mentors and I learned a lot from those individuals. Like I did have legitimate interactions with these people, but when it came to the thing that you have in common with them, it was really boring. It was like obedience 101 classes. Like, here's 4 sentences. We're going to read them to you. Now we're going to ask you a question about which one of those sentences is the answer to our question. And it's like, yeah, you guys, we're not talking about this in a logical way or even an intellectual way. This is just mind controlled programming. Yeah, running off the script.
Exactly. And then I'd hear people, this was even shocking to me as a teenager. It was like people would I'd bring up a topic like a what if question, or the topic would just be in the conversation, and then someone would just repeat what was read to them in their magazine or their book. And I was like, oh, wow, like the programming is like really working on this person's brain. Like I was very aware not to use language like that, but I was maybe one of the few that were like self-aware enough to realize what programming was. And I wasn't thinking of it in those terms at the time, but like I definitely acknowledged it and didn't do it, which then if I didn't do it, the people in the religion would see me as like a risk or a threat because I didn't do it fast enough or I didn't do it at all. It's a very strange, like I have like this hypnotherapist, ex-witness. We just did a podcast together. He calls it, I'm going to botch it, but basically like I had like a master's degree in immersive experience with cult programming and cult indoctrination, something like that. And I like that framing. So like I have an experience that most people don't have. And I know what it's like to resist programming and come out the other side with a different worldview than they want you to have.
It's almost,
everyone can do that.
it sounds like within it, from your experience, you kind of kept a level head in a way, and that breaking glass session, seems like almost a kind of visceral way of you kind of responding to what was going on.
Breaking glass, what do you mean?
When you were saying you had these sessions where you had to throw
breaking glass.
Sorry,
not the metaphor. Yeah.
When you were within it, it seems like you had a kind of awareness of what was going on that perhaps some of the others weren't quite cottoning onto in a way, and that glass breaking was like a visceral response to the stuff that wasn't kind of connecting with you. Yeah,
definitely something like that was happening. It was interesting, those guys that would come over and have alcohol and break glass with, this is like in the music scene in Minneapolis when we were in our mid-20s, and like one guy would wear like a button-up shirt like you're supposed to as a Jehovah's Witness, and his tie, but underneath he had like I'm actually wearing a skull shirt, ironically, but he would have a skull shirt like this underneath that shirt that you could, if you were close enough to him, you could actually see it beneath. And then like the other friend, like the three of us would talk about going to shows, and like we couldn't talk about that at church, but we would like go hang out after and then be like, any shows coming up this weekend you guys are going to? Or like, you got to come to this like after party where this band's going to be or something. And it was like, we're bridging this like two worlds, and they weren't even musicians. They were like fans of music.
That's what I mean.
It was interesting to have that juxtaposition at church. Like my real friends, there's some people here who are my real friends, and everyone else are just like robots.
That's what those two worlds are just so different. That's what's fascinating about it. But how awesome to have such an archive and range of music.
Yeah, this group that is amazing what they did for that time and in that bizarre culture underneath those restrictions to put together. I mean, in 30 albums, it's over 30 albums. They have like another 70 like live session recordings of all unique music. Like they would jam, but like record their sessions and make 8-track or 4-track tapes and I don't know, mix downs. And it was really interesting. And the archive still exists.
That's a huge body of work, but to be able to draw on that for the film must have been really cool.
It was a gift.
Especially these days where, you use like I did a little indie short comedic pilot thing, and there was a song that I really wanted in it from a local Australian band, and I literally just approached the singer and was like, dude, there's no budget on this. I'm trying to promote Aussie bands in Hamburg and stuff. Can I use like, and I had to deal with the record label, and they wanted like, which I understand protecting the rights of musicians, but as a filmmaker, I've had challenges, particularly with music. So I was just watching this. I was like, wow, such a range of soundtrack to choose from.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. And that was one of my big pieces of art that I got. I mean, I did a lot of the work on the film, like 95% of it. I hired a story editor, so she did a lot of really important work at the beginning, and then we like got the story really solid together, and then I did the rest. But the soundtrack for me was so important. I spent 2-3 months just on that, and I drank like a lot of whiskey and wine at that time. And after working, I would come back to my computer. I could work for my normal job, so it's like an after hours thing. And I would just like sit with the whiskey and like listen to the music, or I'd go for long walks with like a scene in mind, like which song or which part of which song like would emotionally fit this topic and the energy of the person speaking. And I would drop the song in the timeline in Adobe Premiere and just like sit with it and like try another section or like adjust it or change the volume and just like try to see if it fits or if it contrasts with the person speaking. And I feel like, and I've done multiple rounds of this. It took me months to nail it. And like I have this interesting like visceral reaction when something works like that, like emotionally works, where like I'll like have this like, I don't know, sense of vibration go through my body and then like shed tears when it's like, oh, like that hit me.
That's awesome. And, that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? Like making this stuff and when something clicks like that, there's nothing like it.
And it's one of those things, yeah. And it's one of those things that like no one understands why it's happening to them when they're an audience member being affected. But I've had so many people write me, and only a couple thousand people have seen my film so far. It's out. It's available to watch on our Patreon. So there's a paywall. And it's like our theatrical release. You buy a ticket to go to the theater, but it's on the internet. And so like, please join if you can. Every person who joins for $10, it's like 10,000 views worth of money to get $10 on. It's like 10,000 views on Amazon for the same $10. So like, it's huge for us to have one person join. And anyway, so not many people have seen the film, but when they write little reviews to me, just because they feel compelled to do so. I'm not asking them to do that. They'll write me a letter about how this film affected them. They're like, I've watched it 3 times and I cried in a different part of the movie for a different reason every time. I'm like, wow, like people are so affected by it. And who watches the documentary more than once, you know? But people are watching this 2-3 times, sharing it with their friends, having people over, making little events out of it. Like it really affects certain people in a heavy way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so interesting the way independent filmmaking's going, and like you say, 10,000 views as opposed to a completely independent page. Do you think that's the future of kind of indie filmmaking?
What's the only viable path?
Yeah.
Right now, because Amazon, I mean, it used to pay like over 20 cents an hour, and then it was down to 18, and then it reduced. Now it's 1 penny per hour of watching. And it's like, they're taking the huge amount of profit away from artists. And even it's even not hard to get that penny per hour, because you also have to meet some like crazy like audience engagement on the comments. You have to do all this work for Amazon to get your penny. It's like so ridiculous. And they're one of the better ones. The other option that's working right now is ad-based. That pays really well. Like Tubi's really good for filmmakers. So if you can watch movies on Tubi with ads, like that's good for filmmakers.
Yeah, cool.
I'm not sure what the actual payment is, but it's something.
I do miss going to the video store, and I mean paying $10 on Patreon. So not only do you get to view the film, there's other things in it. What else is on?
We try to add like 5x the value of that $10. So we have monthly group calls, which are fun, video chats, and just get to know each other. And so many interesting people on there. Like last one we did was actually a guy who was a part of the scene at that time in Minneapolis, but he was out of St. Louis, like a couple states away, and was invited up to play that show that's called October Ridge, that's featured in the film. Him and his wife were in a band, and this film has inspired him to start making music again with his ex-wife. So they're going to redo that album that they were putting out, but the religion kind of tore them apart at that time and ended the band. So like there's like really cool things like popping up because of the film. And a woman out of LA who's a painter, and there's people who just left the religion who are like going through the mental turmoil of like having their worldview shattered, but they're like driven to turn that into like activism. And then I don't know, just like there's just so many interesting people and perspectives that are showing up on the Patreon. And so like having those group calls is really fun. And then our podcast, like that funds the podcast. So like I'm focusing 100% on this right now. And I have a podcast that's the idea, like it took me 5 years to go from concept, crowdfunding, shooting, editing, production, film festival till now. And we've released the film in March this year. And there's going to be other ways to watch it. But like it took 5 years to have an idea to then turn that into something people can be affected by. Where a podcast, I can do what you're doing right now, edit, and have 1 week I can put it out in the world and have the story shared. So that's my, like, I realized that like how much more beneficial podcasts are for this kind of work. And like an artist could have an album, but I'm not going to, try to make a movie about their album. I want to help them promote their album now while it matters, while they're on tour. And I can do that in a week. And it's like, there's a lot of like vibrant, positive, quick turn stuff for the podcast. So I'm doing that, trying to have an episode, at least 1 or 2 episodes a month, but probably it'll turn into once a week eventually once I get the machine running.
It's awesome that community is building, and it'll no doubt it'll no doubt spread. I know exactly. Even with this the small doco I did, that was a long time ago. I still get messages now and then. Like I got a message 2 weeks ago from a guy who was just like, "Hey man, it's just inspired me to like dust the drums off in the basement." Cool. And I'm like, that message. I mean, that was why I did it. That was why I made the film. So similar in your case, when it starts giving back and taking on a thing of its own, that's like the ultimate reason for doing it, I think.
Yeah. That you affect one person for the positive, like inspire someone to take action or go make art again or just play a guitar or whatever.
And like you say, there's a lot of people who might be struggling with this transition. Mm-hmm. They now have this place to go to and make up their own kind of minds.
That's actually a big piece of the storytelling that most people don't pick up on, but all these films I mentioned before and all this other content that's out there that's like trying to hit the religion hard. I mean, these people have an important message, but something that's lost in most of the films is that there's a life after, and it's not just be an activist against this religion. There's a life after where you can actually just land and then rewrite your story. Yeah, you came from this weird place, but now you're sort of liberated from all those control systems and fear, obligation, guilt, the fog. And there's a lot of like mental health stuff to do. But once you get over that hump of like deconstructing the religion, you have the control, the programming, and you like build your own life, like you can move forward and do something inspiring. And the film has this, like the final 10 minutes is like this big breath of fresh air that like most films just roll credits when someone's crying and you're supposed to feel pity. Like, yeah, there's emotional stuff in this film. There's an arc for sure of like loss and then redemption, but like you like they get somewhere, like even especially Cindy Elvendahl, as a singer and songwriter, you meet her when she's young and vulnerable and struggling to deal with this religion, and then like becomes like a rock goddess, like that arc for me was like so powerful to like highlight that band High TV and like what they created and how they kind of made this new, rebranded themselves, maintaining the music as like the through line in their lives. But yeah, like having that landing on the outside is so important. And there's a lot like this religion generates a lot of suicide within the religion for all kinds of reasons. Like they're very homophobic. A lot of homosexual people end up offing themselves in the religion. And then there's the shunning is abuse. Like the religion is already controlling, but then they try to like really like manipulate and control you after you leave and you cut off your family. A lot of people commit suicide after leaving because of that. So having this sort of landing on the outside, I wanted to demonstrate that like through these people's lives, like, hey, there's something good after this, and you can go find your own community on the outside and build a life that's worth living, much more than being a Jehovah's Witness on the outside.
Yeah. And as Eric, the guitarist, says towards the end, I don't want to spoilers, but just it's okay. his takeaway, is that anything's possible. That anything truly is possible. Like you say, you can start to shape the life you want, regardless of where you've come from. Yeah.
Do you hear a noise in the background, or is it okay?
It's okay. No, it's fine. Okay. But it's fine.
That point that he makes about being able to do anything, like this religion is so restrictive. Most people end up dropping all careers, skipping all education, and they just wash windows as like they wash like business windows and like clean up people's trash and like I don't know, clean floors. Like it's like really depressing menial labor jobs is what most people in this religion do, because they don't really have any options. And once you realize that you're completely unrestricted, like Eric describes, like you can really do anything. You have to like make, like you've been restricted your whole lives. You have to kind of, that kind of person needs to like make up their mind that they are able to do all those things. But it takes work, of course, to try to follow your dreams or like build a career. But it's really rewarding when you do it. And it's interesting. I didn't have such restrictions, although I was in that culture. I didn't quite allow that to take root, but I did I did work for some of those people doing some of those dumb jobs, but it was enough. It's the kind of thing like you need to kind of do it to realize how terrible it is and that you want something more out of life. Sometimes it's okay to do those jobs to suffer.
Oh yeah. I've done a few. Day Trip is Eric's band. Are they still? I've been meaning to check them out since because some of the bits I heard is really kind of this melodic guitar driven stuff. I really dig that. So I'm gonna go through. They're still going, Day Trip.
Day Trip, unfortunately, are not still going.
Okay.
When they left their religion, that band dissolved because a couple of the members are still in their religion, actually. Shamian and what's the other guy's name? Ryan's little brother, Reed Sutter, was in that band. So like half the members left the religion, the other half stayed in.
That was Day Trip. Okay, yeah, getting and
they're amazing.
Yeah,
I love them.
I can access their stuff.
Their album that's highlighted quite highly in the film. I can't remember the name of something verse. That album by Day Trip is available for free to listen on the internet.
Okay. Yeah.
Can't quite remember where, but if you go to witnessunderground.com, the art tab at the top /art has every album I could find that's available. Most of it's in one place on Bandcamp, and it's to listen and download for free. And it was always released under the open source format.
Yep.
On the early internet, like from the 80s, early 90s, like that was a common thing. And so Nuclear Gopher is the music production company or group that was run by Ryan Sutter and Rhett Sutter. That still exists on Bandcamp, and all the music that was made by Nuclear Gopher, most of it is available for free, and you can listen to it. And you can find it all on witnessunderground.com,
cool.
Links to all of it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend to the listeners checking that out because
highlights for me are Day Trip and some of the Lavone stuff I like. Like they have some really bizarre out there stuff. And the first two albums, I think the first two, it's like Psychotic Requiem was one of the albums, and another one's something else, Psycho something. And it's like, here are these kids and teenagers making stuff with the album names Psycho, Psychotic. Like they were going through some stuff without even like maybe thinking about it that way. It's really psychedelic out there, psych rock. Let's see what else. And then later on, the High TV stuff is really cool. There's a couple really great Ghost Army songs, and that's like Chad Rieger, who's in the film. He fronted that band. High TV was like the three younger people in the film. That was their group that they made after leaving the religion, and this is super cool. Yeah.
Is there more film festivals in the pipeline?
So how the film festival world works, from my understanding, I did like a course called Film Festival Mastery that I joined, and I learned from a guy who started Slam Dance Festival in the States and this other actor, Justin Giddings, John Fitzgerald, those two guys. It's like you have 1 year to do it. And I spent a lot of money and a lot of energy on the film festival run, expecting to get distribution out of that. But that was 2021. So we went to 11 festivals. And we won an award at Genre Blast, which is cool. I think all the festivals we went to are kind of like B and C tier festivals. And I submitted to way too many. And our film wasn't quite at the, it's my first film. Or my second film really, but my first real film. And anyway, it was an interesting experience. But after 1 year, you kind of can't submit anywhere anymore. And it was a very strange time because we were competing with 2020's films from the pandemic, and we did it in 2021. So they basically normally you can only do it for that year that your film comes out, for that 1 year. So we were competing with 2 years worth of films, like 20,000 films instead of 10,000 from the planet of films, the whole world, humanity's films. Plus all the film festivals in the world cut down how many films that they were streaming to like 1/2 or 1/4 what they normally do.
So the volume increased.
Yeah, volume increased, like how many that they select decreased, and they went to virtual film festivals, which was really strange, and no one knew what they were doing. It was just like upheaval. The whole industry just like was crazy, and I thought it would be to our advantage. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. And then I learned that like you don't really get distribution from film festivals. If you do, you got it before the film festival even happened, because if you're going to get distribution, you're like screening at Sundance and Toronto and like Slam Dance and all the big ones,
I had a similar experience actually with my little pilot around the same time. And I did exactly the same thing. I spent far too much on submitting. And then I realized with what you're saying that the virtual, there were so many online festivals, and it's kind of this modern day turning film festivals almost into a commodity where it's like, we'll give you the L'Oreal, what do you call it? The laurels, L'Oreal, the laurels. Everybody wants a laurel. Everybody wants a, not the shampoo. Everybody wants a laurel, right? And then you've got people setting up film festivals where you don't even know who's on the jury. And they're like I actually won a couple of small awards, which I was genuinely chuffed about, but it didn't really have an impact. Like and now I've realized, like, we had a screening here through some other guys I'm working with. We had a screening, and it was just so awesome to sit in a room with an audience.
Yeah, having the reactions live as the filmmaker is nothing like that experience.
There's
it's
nothing
really special.
there's nothing like that. And the response, you can actually gauge the response, even if it's a small group of people. So when I experienced that after submitting to all these virtual festivals and everything, I was like, well, maybe I just need to get back to having, small communities gathering and watching stuff together.
Yeah. It's great. And what I learned too from the festivals, because the attendance was super low during that it's like post-pandemic year. It was like still pandemic, I guess. People weren't really going out to public spaces. So even though we were getting into physical festivals, we got into 11. So the 4 of them were physical and the rest were not. 7 were virtual. And even those 4 we went to, they're pretty low attendance. Especially it was like just as mask mandates were still on for some of those festivals. But so they're low attendance, but there's something really cool came out of that. Was I still got reactions from those individuals sitting in the theater. One of them, we packed the room, which is amazing. Mostly that was like us hustling at the festival, like come to our screening, and everyone else that came to our screening were actually filmmakers.
But like a gig, like a band music gig, standing out there and saying, hey, come and check us out tonight. Yeah, we're
hustling so hard. We even had CDs made. Like, you guys have a CD player? Like, here's our music. Like, we were just promoting like crazy. But it was super fun. And what was beautiful about all the experiences is, even though they were small groups, because they were small groups, we got to meet those people on a more personal level. And the Q&A was very personal and intense. And like, we spent more days with those same people. So like the relationships that we built with those people was like really, really strong, to the point that I call these people my friends. Like, we have like yearly video catch-ups, and it's been 2 years since then. Or I've gone and met them in person and gone to other people's screenings or their film screenings, because I was living in LA. So a lot of people I met around the country at those different festivals lived in LA, because that's where most films are made. There in New York and Atlanta, I guess. But like, the community that's come out of those more intimate experiences is also really cool. And I've even had screenings where like there's just like 4 or 5 friends that they just wanted to watch it. And those were really valuable experiences, having their reactions. And then like the personal conversations and the way they related to the film was like a really special bond to have with them, and get kind of like a really immediate reaction after watching something I spent years of my life on. It means a lot. Yeah,
it's cool that you were able to do all that through a very strange time. And to now have it
probably saved me.
In that time, it makes sense.
I was so excited about every festival we got in, even the virtual ones. I was like, I'm here for everything. Like, I'm in all the chats and like the video calls, and I was doing everything I could. It was great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I could. I mean, there's. I could honestly talk to you for a long time. Maybe we have to do it again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do another one.
Yeah. Being as this is this is essentially a show about challenges. Is there any challenge? Perhaps we can come up with one together that we could perhaps suggest to the listeners that is relative to some of the themes in the film. Or did you have an idea?
I like this idea of coming up with one together. We can get creative together.
Well, I think that's cool, because some of the so for me, some of the, a big theme in the film was like loss of identity was one thing.
A lot of losses, loss of innocence, loss of identity, loss of like your worldview dissolves and you're like, well, everything I've been told was a lie. I think what's real? I don't know. Like I have to go figure it out, It's
the rug being pulled out from when a belief system is shattered like that, it's the rug being pulled out. And I guess that's why a lot of people hold on to things so tightly, because if that rug gets pulled out, it's like, well, who am I now?
Mm-hmm.
This is all I've ever known. And now that's kind of shaky. Who am I? I'm not sure a challenge relative to loss of identity, but self-expression is a big one.
I had this idea that's kind of emerged from this project that, like, I work with, my podcast is artists who've escaped cults. That's the people I'm looking for, or anyone who's changed their worldview. I'm open about it. And right now I'm focusing on Jehovah's Witnesses just because it's like the year of releasing the movie on this topic. So I want to like really dive in on that. But I have this intuition that self-expression is very healing. And it's such an act of presence that I think just being with yourself when you make art, whether that's painting or doing crocheting or whatever activity you do that's creative, you're getting out of your head and you're like focusing in the present moment to make something just for yourself often, that it's really helpful. So maybe a challenge related to going and creating something, even if you don't share it with the world, but share your process, I think is also valuable.
That's the challenge right there. Is just, if anybody's keen, just take some time to make something that doesn't even have to see the light of day. Just whatever, draw something, build something. Could just, that's all it needs to be.
Write a bad song.
Write a bad song.
Because
Absolutely.
Once you write a bad song, that's easier to do than writing a good song. Go and write a really bad song that you don't want to share with anyone, because then you'll make another bad song. This is advice from a metalhead friend of mine I just met on his channel. I really liked it, actually. Go write a bad song. Keep on writing bad songs until you eventually get to like, you'll finally make something else that you actually are proud of. But go write a bad song first and don't be disappointed in it.
Yeah. And that's part of the fear of creativity, right? Is just being able to do that, pile that lump of clay down first, and then, try and shape it after.
Write a cringy chorus and then write a cringy verse and then write a really bad riff that you hate and then put it all together.
It's classic.
Share it with me.
My son's 10 and he's learning guitar and we jam.
Cool.
And it's quite, I haven't pushed him in that. He's had it around him, obviously, but we have these, sometimes he comes home from school and we don't even say anything. We just get in the room and start jamming and we just mess around. And that's was what I really enjoyed in bands, actually. It was when we just messed around and something came out of that, as opposed to like trying to squeeze it. And it was like, let's just fuck around, and then next thing you know, a little bit comes out of it.
My third band I was in a band called The Clones, and then my own band was ADD Chronicles, and then I was in a third band like after leaving the religion, because kind of I needed to get back to it, but it was called Rocky and the Horrors. But that one, we didn't even intend to ever make a song. We would just play and drink too much and play for 5 hours, making basically like folk punk noise, and with no intention of ever recording. And that for me was like the best band experience I ever had, because it was just about playing and enjoying that process.
And I think for the guys in the film as well, it's like going into that room and just without restraint. Must have been very, very freeing. I think freeing is what music can do. So
and if you do more of that, you just get better at this thing, because you're having fun doing it, and no way to get better at anything than just having fun doing it with no goals necessary. Not being stuck on like outcomes, but just more in the process of making it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't maybe just where to find more information about this film. I would love for people to watch it. That's the main goal, is like affecting people's understanding of this religion and being inspired as well. And so to where to find it is witnessunderground.com is the one good place to go. And then you can see the links to our Patreon. And as it comes out on other platforms, there'll be we'll share where to watch it and how to watch it on the website. So witnessunderground.com is the best spot. And kind of a cool thing we're trying to do is anyone who does join, it's not just me getting my money back for building this thing, or you enjoying, in nice exchange for your money, you get a piece of art that you enjoy. But like 20% of that money goes to a grant for people who've left this particular faith and they want to make art. So the grant is for like their art projects. We have a panel of the people in the movie actually will judge of the people that have submitted. There's been 5 now who've submitted. So we're going to choose one and give them $1,000. And that's the starter. Awesome. And then from then on, it's going to be Patreon money. So I think we have got like $300 in the fund right now for the second round. So like the more people that come in, the more time passes, the more artists that will get funded through this project.
Yeah, I was going to ask if some of it was going back, but what a cool way to do it. What like an incentive. Yeah. Well, no,
thank you.
Big congratulations for going through the process and making it and having this film that is important and saying a lot of important things.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah. So
it's like my life's work at this point. It's not just like a film or another film that I've made. It's like the message I want to give to the world as an adult is in this movie.
Amazing. So, really, really amazing. And knowing about the filmmaking process, it's no small feat. So
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on and helping spread the word about it. And I'd like to have you on as well. I think you're doing some really cool stuff. So we can talk about that as time goes by.
That'd be awesome. Awesome. Yeah. All right, Scott, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel.